Hi, my name is Jackie, and I have a question for you, Joe. The first question is, what's your favorite dish
My favorite dish to cook or to eat?
to cook and eat both?
Oh,
To cook is definitely pasta, one of my favorite things to make. If I'm cooking for others, if I'm cooking for myself, it's nachos.
of course.
Mm. The next question is, what is your favorite drink, soft or different kind of drink?
I love sparkling water. I just love the fizzy bubbles. Like I think that's like my go-to.
As a
Topo
bubble
Chico
guy.
is probably my favorite brand.
Why you choose this? Why you choose the restaurant?
Why did I choose to like cook and work in restaurants? I like cooking for
Yeah.
other people. Food makes people happy. So I think it's just that kind of thing that like I like sharing myself and making people happy with food.
Me too. That is, that's why I like to cook because you can share food with other people. It makes them happy. It's something you can give everybody, and you can connect with people who don't even speak the same language as you when you're feeding them. And that's what I love. It helps
Absolutely.
connect everyone. What's your next question, Jackie?
Who was your mentor?
Who was your
Say that again.
mentor?
Oh,
Yeah.
my mentor. I've had a few different mentors, depending on where I worked. No one like, famous by any means. Just very, role model worthy chefs that led by example. I think just people that led by example definitely showed me the right and wrong ways to do things.
Uh, what was your first dish?
My first dish, like the first thing I've ever made.
Hmm.
Oh boy, I don't even know if I remember. I don't know how long ago it was. I mean, I've been cooking since I was a little kid with my mom. So,
You don't
I,
remember though what the first thing you made was?
oh gosh, I don't
Or the
know. I
most
remember,
memorable thing
I
that you
remember
made?
in high school, when friends would come over and I would cook for everyone, like after school, I would make these like buffalo chicken wraps that were like everybody's favorite. So, like maybe that was one of the like first things I used to cook for other people.
Very interesting. The first thing I ever made, I was 5, and my dad brought home 3 live lobsters, and he let me name them Larry, Moe, and Curly, and then he dropped them into a pot of water. And at 5 years old, I thought that screaming sound was them actually screaming.
Oh
But
no,
yeah, yeah. So I don't eat seafood.
you're still traumatized to this day.
I am very traumatized. Plus, we had a saltwater fish tank behind the dinner table. So yeah, traumatized. Absolutely.
uh,
What's your next question, Jackie?
what was the worst dish you made?
Oh, that's a
Oh
good question.
boy. Um, hmm. Recently, I could just think of recently. I've definitely messed up some bread recently that like had been to the point where like even using it for breadcrumbs or like croutons has been questionable.
Wow. What do you think happened to it?
Um, I think I just kind of like messed up the proofing on it. I wasn't really, it's always one of those things where there's so many variables involved that I'm always like testing out a new flour or trying a new technique or just like seeing what's going to happen if I do it this way.
Right.
And it could be something where it's like, there's a reason why you're not supposed to do it this way. And I just wanted to try it to see what would happen.
Let's
And I
just see what
wanted to see,
happens.
I wanted to see what would go wrong because like sometimes by making something wrong, you can find out why the other way is right.
That's very
And
true.
so a lot of times I'll do things wrong just to learn and see kind of what happens.
Yeah, that's you know what? I actually that was probably the thing I messed up recently too. I did one of those the no knead bread recipe where you just let it sit for 24 hours, except I forgot about it because it was I was letting it proof in the oven, just sitting there, with the oven off. And
Yep.
so I let it wait for like I think it was 36 hours. And yeah, it was just I
Yeah, you're on your way to getting a starter there.
yeah, pretty much. I could have. I could have probably used it to put some nails in the wall. It was awful. So I literally threw it out. I had one bite of it. I was like, nope, this is terrible. Do you have any more questions, Jackie?
I have problem with bread too.
Oh, okay. All right, go ahead.
My worst ones. Actually, my sibling made it, not me.
Your sibling wrote them.
Yeah. Somehow they mix the whole ingredients. Mix everything. They put coffee, they put water, they put milk, they put eggs.
Oh, the thing that you made or that your
Yeah.
sibling made.
Yeah.
Coffee, water, eggs. What else?
And milk. Milk.
Into
milk.
what?
Some bread. I don't know what it means.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
But overall, it was good.
Oh, it was good.
Funny.
Oh, it wasn't bad.
No. I'm surprised.
So, do you have any more questions, Jackie, or does
Yes,
anybody?
I do.
Oh, okay, go for it.
What is
going.
your best dish?
The best dish?
Yeah.
I definitely think pasta is probably one of my most popular or favorite dishes. I'm often like changing what I do. I make a focaccia bread that took me about 4 years to make the recipe for. And that's one that is definitely very popular, one of my best.
I want some focaccia right now. That's my favorite. That's
it's so good.
Mostly because I love vinegar. So it's the vehicle to get the vinegar, the balsamic vinegar in me. So anything that has balsamic vinegar, I'm down for, especially if you're just taking bread and salty bread. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. I have a question for you. I was just curious, what restaurant do you work at now? Well, not right this minute.
I don't work in a restaurant. I've been out of like the traditional restaurant for about 2 years now. Traveling, well, up until recently, I was traveling full time, doing dinners, pop-ups, private classes, lessons, all kinds of stuff. So really kind of like bringing my food to the people, hosting dinners here in Los Angeles.
With DTLA Josh, right?
Yeah, I did some with DTLA Josh. And yeah, kind of like a very non-traditional restaurant model. My restaurant is me traveling to, wherever the people are that want to eat.
That's so cool. I've met so many chefs through him, honestly. There's another guy named Pat. He does the same thing you do. And he just has like pop-up brunch, even right this minute. He's just doing like pop-up brunch and, he just like makes up a new menu and like every week and he sells out in like an hour. That must be so much fun to do. I'm very the restaurant chef side of me is very jealous of people like you and him that just can go where they want and people come to you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but it's also, I think, a lot more work than people realize. The like instability of it all is definitely makes it a lot more stressful than like going into a restaurant every day and having your same routine and schedule and everything planned out where you're going to be busy and you're going to have work, and it takes a lot more input on your part to sustain your own brand and business, and you're your own boss, so you're only as successful as how hard you work.
Right. That's very true. Jackie, did you have another question? Because I have an important question for Mr. Sasto here.
You go first, Charlie.
Okay. What was it like being on Top Chef?
Oh boy. It was a wild ride. I had never seen the show before. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And it was a big, learning and growing experience. Not only did I like make lifelong friends and memories, it taught me a lot about what I care about when it comes to food and cooking, and kind of how to really express myself even more through food.
That's awesome. Who were the judges? Was there anybody who came on that was like exciting for you to meet judge wise?
Oh, there were a lot of really exciting judges. I mean, there was towards the end, we started cooking for a lot more reputable or well-known chefs and judges. In the beginning, the first few episodes, I didn't really know who any of the guest judges were. I think they were more like local to the Denver area. The people that were from Denver, from Colorado, were very excited about them. So obviously still well known, just within their own circles. Me not coming from Colorado, I wasn't really sure who they were, but once we kind of got down towards the end, they were like, more nationally recognized and well-known chefs and restaurateurs that we were cooking for.
Who was one of them? Can you name
Wiley Dufresne was a big one. Paul LeBron, Danny Myers. Gosh, that feels like so long ago, but I guess it really wasn't. It was a couple years.
When was that?
It's 3 years ago now, I think.
I think it's funny that you said that you didn't really watch the show, because I think people expect that because I'm a chef that I watch all of those shows like Chopped and Top Chef and Hell's Kitchen. I don't watch any of them. I don't.
Growing up, I watched Chopped a lot. Like I loved
watching
that show, because it was like, it was before I was really cooking professionally. I was into food and cooking, and like I cooked a lot, but I wasn't like, working in a restaurant yet. And I knew all the judges' like qualms and like likes and dislikes, and I would always sit on the couch and be like, oh, like I would do this, I would do that, I would do that. And I finally had the opportunity to go on Chopped by the time when I was finally working in a restaurant, and it was great. I had a ton of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the only show that I watched was Great Chefs, Great Cities. Did you ever see that show?
Yeah, that was
the show I watched growing up.
I think that was like on Discovery Channel or something.
It was on like public access when I was
PBS, yeah, public broadcast.
And that's what I would watch. But I never really watched other shows. That was it.
I watched that one. That was a good one.
That one was great. I loved that. If you guys haven't seen Great Chefs, Great Cities, I suggest you check it out, just because even Bobby Flay was on that show back in the day.
Yes, he was. Uh-huh.
Yeah. It was just very cool to see just different chefs in the restaurant cooking. It wasn't like when you watch a TV show, everything is staged. It's all like set up. They make something, they put it in the oven, and then they pull something out right away because they've already made the next step of the recipe. But on that show, they were actually showing them like in their work kitchen, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Definitely, you would never find a show like that these days.
No, absolutely not. It's not pretty enough. Does anybody have any questions for Chef Joe? Anyone? Lisa, do you have any questions? You always have some good ones. I don't see you at the moment, but I know you're around, Lisa. Anyone? Let's see. No, I guess not. So I think Linda's going to come in right now in just a minute. She's been having some trouble due to the protest. Oh, hey, Lisa, there you are. Do you have any questions for Chef Joe? You got to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi.
So what kind of show were you on?
I was on a cooking competition show. So a whole bunch of chefs, all with different challenges, cooking for judges. It's pretty crazy.
Have you ever seen any shows like that, Lisa?
Yes, I have.
So he was on the one called Top Chef.
So when you cook the food for the judges.
Oh, good question.
For the judges, do you have a time to actually taste your food?
Yeah, so we would cook and they would try the food, and sometimes they liked it and sometimes they didn't like it. And you would always want them to like it. And then every week they would send someone else home, whoever they liked the least. And then whoever stayed there the longest was the winner.
So did you cook anything? Oh, go ahead, Lisa. Sorry.
So did you actually ever taste the food before the judges actually tasted?
Did I taste it first? Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah,
Did you
so
taste it
we would always try to taste it first, just to make sure it was good. And then the judges didn't always agree with us. Sometimes we would think it was good and they did not. And then we tried to taste each other's food too, but there wasn't always time for that because the cameras and everything moving around. So sometimes we did and sometimes we didn't.
Very interesting. We just got one other person in here, and Linda, unfortunately, I think she's having some problems getting in due to the protesting. I think they've knocked some things down in her area that are making it difficult for her to connect to the internet. I don't know where you're currently. Are you in Los Angeles right now?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles.
Where in LA?
In between Hollywood and West Hollywood.
Oh my
Ooh.
goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yes.
wild here. There are helicopters just about all day and night long hovering outside. They've gone up and down the street in front of our place a couple times, but it's all peaceful and very, proactive.
Well, you know what? As long as they're being peaceful, it's the people that are coming in after and looting that's
Exactly. It's
very-
almost like a shift change.
yes,
All the
exactly.
peaceful people go home at night at the end of the day when they're supposed to, and then the people with ulterior motives come in and are taking advantage of the situation.
Yep, it's very scary. I live in Redondo Beach, and it's very unnerving to see such a because Redondo and Hermosa and Manhattan, they're tiny little cities, and all the businesses in Manhattan Beach have been boarded up. They're scared to death that they're gonna get that the protesters are gonna move down this way, or the looters rather.
Yeah, it's the looters.
Yes. So, oh, that was nice of Benjamin. He says, "Be safe." There's a couple of teachers that are in here. Benjamin is our supervisor. He's a great guy. But anyhow, I think that everyone who's here is here, or who's gonna be here is here. So we would love to see you make some pasta, sir.
Yeah, of course. My favorite thing to do. I made some dough in advance. I added some spinach powder to this dough, so it's actually green. So we could see it better. And as you can see, I have lots of plants. I like green things. I guess to kind of like take a step backwards, so you guys can kind of see how dough comes together and what it is. It's a combination of flour and water. In this case, I'm using semolina flour, which is like a coarser ground. It almost looks like cornmeal. It's the whole endosperm, the wheat and the germ all together, compared to like your regular flour that you would get, like AP flour or white flour like you would use for cakes or something like that. So two different, you could still make pasta with either, but this one is just flour and water. So I mixed this together a couple hours ago, and it starts off pretty crazy, really shaggy, hard, messy ball. And then as you continue kneading it and working it and kneading it and developing that gluten, you end up with this wonderful, beautiful product. And then what I like to add is I have like freeze-dried spinach, which is a green powder. And this like you could make if you have a freeze dryer, but most of the times it's easier to buy. But it's essentially, tons and tons of spinach, frozen and ground and dried, all the moisture removed. And then you could add it to things like doughs to get this beautiful green color. And depending on how much you add, it can be more or less green. Let me bring you guys down a little lower so you can kind of see where I'm working on.
Perfect.
That's good. Yep. I'll probably be only in it a little bit, but that's okay. I can kind of.
No, you're in there.
I'm in there. So I always like to just work with a little bit of dough at a time. Air is one of those things that kind of starts to dry the dough out. If you think about pasta that you're used to buying, like in the boxes at the grocery store, they're dried already. But in this case, from this one dough that's just flour and water, you can really make, depending on how much you know what you're doing, up to like 50 or so different shapes, which is pretty wild, all just from this. So I always like to take a smaller piece out and roll it into a log is like a great starting point for a lot of different shapes. And then like one of the tricks to really working with pasta and rolling it out is going and doing it having done it before, you know, it's one of those things that it's very hard to just like read a book and know, be able to like follow the recipe. You know, a lot of it's really getting your hands onto it, doing it with your hands, and getting a feel for like the dough. You know, sometimes you want it a little more wet, you want it a little more dry. But in this case, by starting with a nice log, you're able to roll this out, and then you can really kind of like use this as your base and then cut it into different pieces depending on what you want to do. So like one of which we can do is cutting off into little squares, and then any number of ways once you have these, hold on, let me go here. Once you have these little pieces, and I'll cut off a bunch of them so I can show you, is like a great starting point for doing any of these drag types of shapes. So stracciate means to drag in Italian. So anything you're doing where you're really dragging the dough is making one of those shapes. So you could do that with a finger, and you drag it across the board, and then you're ending up with this little shape that kind of has this beautiful little pocket in it and the outside. And that's just from one finger. You could do it with your thumb, and you kind of get a slightly different shape with a different size hole in it. You could do it with some sort of scraper or knife, and that kind of gives you another shape with a different size hole in it. And all of these are just different sizes of the same kind of shape, which essentially, if you even want to break it down even more, like cavatelli, which just means little hollow. So you have these little hollows, or these little kind of holes down the center of each piece of pasta where the water is going to go through, where the sauce is going to go through, whatever you're going to eat it with. And that just kind of gives you this thing to work with. And then you have all these other tools you can use. So this is like a wooden board, call it like a gnocchi board. It has all these little like ridges in it. And this will give designs to your shape. So you could do the same little pieces, but on a board like this. And that way, when you drag it, now you have,
oh, wow,
all these little kind of beautiful ridges on the outside of your shape. You still have that little hole down the center, and that kind of like captures whatever you're working with. But
can't you do that with a fork?
And you could do the same thing with a fork. So like if you don't have one of these boards, you can do it on a fork. One of the things I always like to show people is like if you have one of these box cutters, or not cutters, graters, a box grater, is you actually have all these like built-in designs all over the side of it. So like you could roll with your thumb on here, and you have like these beautiful little ridges that you get on the side of the box grater. You could do it on like the other side, and then you get all of those ridges. I never thought of the box grater. And like, you know, when I've taught some of these classes, people like, they're super creative. Like I've seen people use like an orange or a lime, and they'll roll it on the outside of a fruit, and they'll get like the design that's on the outside of a fruit. I don't know if I have any limes out. It might all be in the fridge. But it's pretty crazy. And then like, you know, you go down to Italy, and they make all these like custom different boards. Each family will have like their family crest, or whatever it is in the board. And, you know, this, you could be used to roll small pastas, big pastas. If you look at something like this and you cut off a bigger piece and you roll it into a longer piece, then you could still even now drag this across the board. And now you have this really long,
oh my God, I never thought of this.
And it all just depends on the size, you know. So this one here, we'll roll again. And I'm not pressing too hard because I don't want to get the indents. I'm just kind of rolling it out. So it's a thinner piece to work with. And then you could really start getting crazy, and you could do spirals. And a lot of this then now has to do with the pressure that you're putting on. And then now you have like a spiraled piece of pasta, all just, you know, using these same tools, the same dough, and just kind of doing it in different ways with all different things. And then, you know, one of the things I always like to keep a spray bottle around, because I could feel it's really dry in my house right now. So like this is already starting to dry out, but a tiny bit of water kind of helps give this a little more stickiness. So that way you can still roll it out. And then you really have, you know, lots and lots of different options. There are other shapes where you can just press your fingers down into it, and that'll like catch, you know, little pieces of ground beef or pork or carrots or vegetable sofrito, you know, and there's no curve in this one. It's a flat piece, but you could do the same thing with just one press. And now you have all of these little kind of pieces you can make, and you could use, or, you know, there are other shapes. Depending on different regions and where you go to, you could cut these into little tiny pieces. And a lot of it, you're like, oh my God, that would take forever to make a big bowl of pasta using all of these. These are called like little checkies.
That's what nonas are for, though.
Yeah, they'll spend all day just, you know, rolling these tiny little pieces.
Oh my gosh.
And then that's what, you know, they'll have for dinner. And that's just all they'll do every day. And, you know, once you've done this a lot, you get very fast at it. You kind of like fall into a rhythm. It's something that is a lot less time consuming, where it may become overwhelming if you're not used to doing it. But the more you do it, the faster you get, the easier it is to do something like that. One of the other shapes, I can't do it with this one. I need a knife. Hold on.
Well, I'm fascinated. This is like fascinating to me. Like, truly, I could sit and watch you do this probably all day. Why don't I watch cooking shows?
Yeah, because cooking shows don't actually have cooking anymore. That's why.
That's right. That's why. I forgot.
Competitions of people like making cakes and crazy garden designs and stuff.
Yeah, I don't really care about that. But what you're doing,
very little
awesome.
are they cooking. Another traditional shape is orchiette.
Oh,
you can cut off a little piece, and then you use the back of a knife to drag across the dough, and then inverting it with your thumb, and you kind of end up with this little hat with all those ridges that will catch the sauce. And this actually translates to little ear, as it kind of is like.
Thank you. Yes, that is. Yes,
lobe.
I've made those, and I've made cavatelli with children, which you know, isn't edible. I think I told you that. But they're, you know, they're beautiful. They're just beautiful.
Yeah. So it's really, you know, the kind of thing that just comes from a lot of practice. You know, it's hard to really just get better at it without doing it. And it's a lot of muscle memory, a lot of repetition. But one of the things I really like about pasta is like every single one is like a unique fingerprint, where you can tell one chef's version of a cavatelli versus another chef's, and it becomes his like distinct way of doing it, because, you know, he puts a little bit of different pressure on it than someone else. And you end up with shapes that are unique to each individual pasta maker.
Right. I specialize in Asian cuisine, and you could always tell who was making dumplings.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Dumplings.
Same exact thing.
I was the dumpling chef, so every time I was there, I just like would beg to do it. Please let me make dumplings. And like you said, repetition and muscle memory. I got to the point where I was making 100 dumplings every 30 minutes. Which, you know, I mean, that's tough work. But then we have, I don't know if you've ever been to Din Tai Fung.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you can watch them make their dumplings. They put me to shame. That's beautiful. Does that have a name?
So that's fusilli, which means spiral.
Right.
So these come in all different sizes, from like really long ones to shorter ones. And then like each region will have their own way of, you know, naming it or calling it, or sauce that goes with it. But essentially it's just the technique of applying a bit of pressure to where you're kind of creating a spiral with it.
That's so very cool. Let me see real quick. Okay. So one of the things that you were saying is that you keep mentioning that the shapes are to catch different sauces and things. So that's essentially, I would think that's the point of a lot of those pastas, except for those tiny little, that looks like a soup type of pasta. But the other ones, so the reason why they're shaped that way is to catch different like sauces and things.
Yeah, so traditionally, a lot of the shapes were made to go with a certain sauce, you know, specifically to pick up or catch certain things. A lot of days, that's often forgotten and not something to consider when you're making pasta, but that's usually how a shape came to be, is what kind of sauce or meat or vegetable that they had around at that time. We're talking hundreds of years ago, and what kind of combination of flour, eggs, or water they had, and kind of putting those all both together. And that's kind of how traditions came to be.
Wow, that's actually really fascinating, because I think that a lot of the time we don't realize that there's an actual point to this random noodle we're eating. I think that, a lot of the time it's just wait, hang on. Guys, can you mute yourself, please, so that we're not interrupting Joe here? Thank you. So yeah, a lot of the time, I think we just assume that, oh, it's pretty, and that's why the pasta is made that way. But there's a point to all of it. Like, what's that? Oh, it's even like different rices. Like when you make regular rice, long grain rice, and you put it in the fridge, it's terrible. It's not meant to be saved or meant to be cold. But short grain rice, you can put it in the fridge and it will be fine. It's similar to that in that there's a purpose for all of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think people often forget that, and a lot of it just has to do with the region and what people had available. A lot of it comes down to resourcefulness. And nowadays we have access to everything just about at any time under normal circumstances. You go to the grocery store and you can get any kind of meat, you can get any kind of vegetable,
right?
You can get anything in a jar or can, but that wasn't always the case. So, what people had access to often dictated what they ate and what became popular at that time.
I'm honestly just fascinated with what you're doing. It's kind of like one of those ASMR videos, like where you're watching. Those so satisfying.
It's therapeutic, it's mesmerizing, it's the kind of thing. It becomes very cathartic, to be able to kind of settle into a pasta table and just work away and make pasta.
That's amazing. Do you have a dish that's Italian that you love to make in particular, whether it's pasta or not?
My family growing up was always like Sunday gravy, like red sauce gravy, like spaghetti, gravy. Or Italian gravy. People nowadays just say gravy and they think of like the white sauce that goes on turkey. Totally different in a different household. I grew up in like an Italian American family. And, our gravy was like the red sauce that you put on pasta or you put into lasagna or something like that.
I think that's very funny that people don't realize that Italians are talking about red sauce when they say gravy.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's very, regionally specific.
Yes, it is. Lisa had another question for you. How do you make lasagna noodles?
So that's totally different lasagna.
Right.
Lasagna uses eggs and flour. This dough here is just flour and water. So a completely different dough. And the eggs actually make the dough much more elastic, and you can roll it much thinner, and you kind of end up with like those sheets with the machine where you can kind of sheet it through. You could use a rolling pin to make it really thin and wide. I don't have any of that dough ready. I just made this flour and water dough, but it's a completely different dough and like a totally different, like you wouldn't use this dough to make lasagna sheets, just like you wouldn't use an egg dough to make all of these.
What would happen if you used an egg dough to make what you're making right now?
You could use an egg dough to make these. The texture would be really weird. It would have like quite a bit of chew to it because the eggs kind of set when they cook.
Yes.
And it makes for like a much dense, because like this is very thick. If you think of like the thickness of this versus like a lasagna sheet, which is like, paper thin. Right. So like eggs, when they're paper thin and you cook them, kind of create this wonderful, beautiful texture that everybody knows is like pasta. Where if you cook eggs in this thickness with flour, it really kind of like hardens and sets up, and it never really gets soft. It stays kind of chewy, which is just, to me, is weird. It's not like desirable, but there are probably people out there that do it.
Yeah, I think that's that might have been one of the issues that we had with the pasta I made with those kids. I think it might have been that we made one dough for all of the pasta we were making, and I'm quite certain that's what was wrong with it. It had eggs in it.
Definitely possible.
Yes. Let's see. Jackie has a question. How long have you been working with pasta?
I've been working, I want to say probably like 6 or 7 years. I've been cooking professionally since 2010, 10 years. And I didn't start making pasta for the first couple of years. It wasn't until like the second or third restaurant I worked at where I really got into it and learned all about it and fell in love with it.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, we have a bunch of questions now. Linda, oh wait. Yeah, Linda wants to know, oh, what's the lined wooden pasta rolly thing that Joe is using? That would be the lined rolly thing, yes.
Yeah, so this is a gnocchi. They call it a gnocchi board, but I mean, essentially it's just like a gnocchi paddle. It has wood. Wood is always best for pasta because it's porous. It gives the pasta something to like grip onto. You wouldn't want to use like plastic or metal. There's something about like natural wood touching the dough that gives it its like unique texture, and the dough will naturally kind of stick to it. The wood will suck away moisture and like kind of help promote non-sticking, where plastic or metal has a tendency to sometimes stick, but this is just like an extension of my hand or my fingers. I can make the same shapes, whether I use this to pull across the board or, you know, whether I use my two fingers to pull across the board. Just your fingers will eventually get tired, and this, you know, it's much more consistent in terms of pressure. And with this, you can pick stuff up, you can move it around, and like your hands, you have a harder time doing something like that.
I think Linda missed the part where we explained that you could, instead of getting the gnocchi board, you can use a fork to do that as well. Because Linda loves to cook at home, so.
Right. I mean, I have a fork somewhere.
So Linda, the pasta that he's using is just semolina flour and water, or yeah, you can use regular flour and water, and you can just use a fork to make those.
Yep, super simple. Which is pretty crazy. A lot of people don't realize that you can kind of get so much out of pasta with just flour and water. They think it's much more complicated than that, but a lot of it has to do with just time that you put into it to be able to either roll it out or knead it, really develop that gluten and understanding. What was I going to do? I was going to do the fork. I got distracted. So another kind of, when you roll out these strings, you can make peachy, which is really, it's a thick spaghetti. So when you roll this out super thin, now you're kind of left with a bunch of these noodles that you can cook up almost like udon or a thick ramen or a thick spaghetti, but it's called peachy from a certain region in Italy. And then these are kind of all can hang out together.
I have a good question. Have you ever heard of or tried the threads of God?
Yes, sufilindu. I am very familiar with them. I've tried it. I have not been able to replicate it. It's one of those ones that like you have to learn from someone. Like I could watch videos all day, but I think you need to like, you know, learn the feeling that the dough needs to be, because it's has a lot to do with the salt water and salt reacting with the gluten and kind of inhibiting the gluten structure to a certain point.
Can you explain what the threads of God are real quick? So
it's like taking a dough like this, like it's only flour and water and salt. And then you're rolling it out and then twisting it. And then you stretch it. And then you twist it. And then you stretch it. And you keep on kind of like creating more and more and more pieces, and you have all of these like tiny threads of pasta by like looping it back over itself and stretching and looping it back over itself and stretching. Where obviously my dough right here, if I stretch it, it's going to break. When you get the dough to the perfect consistency, then you're able to kind of stretch it, and you stretch it over like a basket or a bowl, and you let it dry in this like big web. and then you're able to like break and have these like crazy, like super thin web-like, really mosaic, ornate pieces of pasta. But it's one that is quickly becoming harder and harder to find because of how hard it is to make. It's originally made on this tiny little island in the south of Italy, and
Sardinia, right?
yeah, in Sardinia. And there's only a handful of people, you know, that know how to make it. And it's definitely one of those things where you need to have a feel for it. So you can't just like read a book and be like, oh, this is how it's made. You got to have someone teach you. And since there's so few people that actually know how to make it still alive, few people like are passing on that knowledge, which is, you know, pretty crazy, kind of sad, but also like really unique about pasta, you know, that you can't just learn it. It's much like an art form. But back to the fork.
Yes.
Easy enough. You know, we got our fork, we got our little pieces of dough. And I mean, it's really just as easy as like taking it on the fork, and with your thumb, you kind of roll it off the edge of the fork. And you have these cute, adorable little pieces. And you could really just kind of like go through the hole. And you get the same exact designs on that as if you're rolling it on the board. The board's just a little easier because it's bigger, heavier versus like a little fork.
Right.
But same thing, same exact thing.
That's incredible. What? Oh, I wanted to ask. When you go to the store and you see those expensive bags of pasta that are, you know, it's like a cellophane bag and stuff. It says that it's like die cut, like a copper dye or something. Why is that an important, or why does that make the pasta so expensive, essentially?
So bronze dye is actually what you're referring to. So like extruded pasta is like made by pressure. So you take the same flour and water, a different percentage, so it's a much drier, almost like sand-like consistency. You put it into the hopper, and pressure extrudes the dough and forces it out of what they call a die, and it has like these shapes on the side, and that's like, you know, what makes a rigatoni or a macaroni or like a penne. And normally it can be made with Teflon or plastic, which is going to be super smooth and slick, and you're going to have like, you know, Teflon's cheap, plastic's cheap, but when you extrude through a slick, non-porous surface, it's going to make a smooth, slick product that then is much in lower quality because it doesn't have any texture on the outside.
Right.
You know, like if you look at something like this orecchiette, there's tons of texture on the outside, like on a very kind of small scale. It's not smooth. Yeah. And you don't want your pasta to be smooth because that texture is what is going to like kind of like help emulsify the sauce. Things are going to stick to it. It's going to kind of make things starchy. It's like this genius version of engineering that the Italians came up with when extruding things like this. But bronze is obviously much more expensive, but it causes those abrasions and those micro abrasions to be on the exterior of the pasta and to give you that texture on the outside. But, you know, bronze is not cheap, so it's a much harder thing to get. And since you have a much nicer product, you kind of get out of it what you put into it.
So could my students, could all the participants today, could they go to like, the only place I can think of right now that has it, like Trader Joe's, where they have like freeze-dried fruits and vegetables? Could they crush that up and throw it in some flour and water and make, because I know that the big jar of spinach powder you have, that's like a restaurant industry thing.
Right. Yeah, but you're right. Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, there's like the whole health food aisle that has kale powder, spirulina powder, beet powder, spinach powder that people add to their smoothies and stuff. It's that same powder that you could put into your pasta dough.
Well, I know what I'm making tonight. Let me see. We have some other questions here. Jackie wants to know what, so they've been working on informational interviews lately. So they've got like questions that they're wanting to practice. So Jackie wants to know what some of your strengths and weaknesses are.
My strengths and weaknesses. I feel like Michael Scott. I work too hard. I care too much. No, I think definitely my strengths are my ability to kind of teach and communicate to people. That's a fun one where you kind of braid it together
That's beautiful.
like that. And really just kind of like explain myself well. I feel like a lot of chefs have a hard time teaching things. And to me,
Yes.
a true mastery of something is the ability to teach it to others and to be able to explain it. And so having that ability to kind of teach well and explain the why you're doing something and not just how to do something, I think goes a long way. My weaknesses would definitely be working too much, in the sense that like I become consumed by whatever I'm doing, and I'll often like burn myself out. Like I'll want to work all day, be the first one there, the last one to leave. And it starts to like cause me to be really short with people, to kind of lose my temper more easily, to not think as clearly. You could forget things much more easily. So it's like finding that perfect balance of like working hard and working a lot, but still taking care of yourself and getting enough rest and recovery that you're able to like perform at your best.
You sound like every chef that ever existed. That's I mean, the good ones at least. We all want to be the first one there. I can't even count the amount of times I went to work, didn't get paid for all that extra time I spent there, but it was pretty much required anyway. But 6 days a week, 8 to 12 hours a day. I mean, you get consumed and then burnt out. That's why the job life expectancy for a chef hasn't changed. I've been a chef for 19 years, and it was 6 months, the average life expectancy of a job. When I went into the industry, it's still, I think, 6 months now.
It's pretty wild. It's very unique. People that are outside of the industry, it's hard for them to understand. Just like I would never understand. I've never worked a 9 to 5. Like, I don't know what that's like to only work Monday through Friday. What do you do after 5 o'clock? You just stop working? Like, it's wild to me. I don't know what that's like. It's just something that, two different perspectives.
Holidays, that's another thing that I've just recently experienced. Like, you mean I don't work on a holiday? I thought that was specifically for working.
Yeah.
Very cool. This is very, very cool. Oh, wait, Jackie has another question. Oh, what was the last job you had before becoming a chef? That's a good question.
I was cooking in college. So that was like my job through college I was cooking. I was a teacher's assistant for one of my teachers. In high school, I was a lifeguard. I grew up in Las Vegas, so we had lots of pools. And that was like definitely the sought after job in high school was lifeguarding. I think that was like the last job I had before getting into the restaurant industry.
Lifeguarding. Did you work at like a big hotel or?
I worked at a hotel. I worked at a country club. I worked at a community pool. I think it was like a different job every couple of summers.
Very cool. I think I've always been a chef. I can't really remember doing anything else.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, it's like I don't even know if there's another world. So this was great. Let's see. Does anybody have any more questions? You can type into the chat. I know Jose he said yum. He's looking at your pasta. Oh, Mark asked a question. Do you have a mentor? So I think you said maybe earlier, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, earlier on I did, like, there's chefs like Jason Berthold and Chris Johnson, and I think there's always like maybe one person at each restaurant I worked at that like I looked up to, and tried to like model my behavior after, and like look to him as a leader and the right way to handle situations and the wrong way to handle situations. But I don't even know. I don't want to say unfortunately, because I don't think it's unfortunate that I didn't have a mentor in the traditional sense. But no, not like one specific person where like, I know now there's like a sous chef of mine that's worked with me for the past 3 years, maybe a little over 3 years, who like I've been his mentor now. And it's like very apparent in the sense that like, I'm always teaching him, I'm helping him. We talk all the time. He's like running a kitchen now on his own. And to see how far like he's come from like being a cook to now like becoming a chef, it's pretty awesome. I could see myself in a lot of his food, which is like how a parent must feel when they see their kid growing up,
Right.
which is pretty wild feeling, you know. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you don't know, but that's like the best way I can relate it. Because I mean, I don't have kids, but I imagine that's what it would feel like.
Right. That's because I feel similarly. Like I can't think of one particular chef that or somebody who is like specifically my mentor. I think with food, you just try to model yourself after people who you like, respect their abilities to do certain things. Like there's never been just one person that's like a mentor, although we are having the closest thing that I've had to somebody I would try to model my behavior after. We're having him on in 2 weeks. Andrew Zimmern is going to.
Oh yeah.
He's gonna be here, which I'm very much looking forward to. But I really love his sense of openness. Him and Anthony Bourdain, their ability to just go anywhere, not scoff at different traditions and the crappiest places in the you know, just eating in an alleyway or eating with a tribe of people, and it's an experience. And that's what I really love about those two chefs, because they went out of their way to experience other cultures exactly how they live, not going to the nicest restaurant in a third world country, or just, you know, going to the places that Yelp tells you to go to, or TripAdvisor.
Great people.
We got lots of questions now. Lisa wants to know if you were ever a judge on a food show.
I haven't been a judge on a TV food show. I've judged like competitions at like festivals or around. Like I've been guest judges like in Aspen and Food and Wine and things like that, but not on like a televised setting.
And then Jackie's got a question. She said, I think she's asking, did you ever train anyone to be a cook?
I've trained a lot of people.
Right, Jackie? Have you ever trained anyone?
I've trained a lot of people. You know, people who have never cooked before. So like people that have cooked for a very long time that wanted to kind of relearn from the beginning. And, you know, that's the thing about cooking. I mean, even myself is, I feel like I'm never done learning. And I think that's what sets a lot of like really great cooks and chefs apart from others that, you know, think that they don't have anything left to learn. Like I still approach every day that like, I don't know it all. I don't know everything. I still have tons to learn. I'm always asking questions. I'm always like trying to consume information, whether it be like books or videos or whatever it is. And there's just like, you know, it's that never ending pursuit of knowledge that I think is really something important and not to lose sight of.
There have been many times that I do exactly what you're talking about. I will bring a recipe into my class and say, all right, guys, I'm not a baker, but we're going to try and do this today. And we made, for instance, one time we made French bread, and I think we touched it too much and it turned into ficelle. Like this, so I think we killed the bread. But then we came back the next day and made it again and got it right. So it's about
as long as you're learning.
Yes, we've had lots of learning experiences in my classroom. Most of them were me, just, you know, like, I mean, if I can't, like you said, it makes for the, you know, you're never done learning. And if you are, then you shouldn't be doing what you're doing if you think you're done learning. I love going in to my classroom and showing my students that, hey, I've never done this before. Let's try it. You know, or I always joke that I'm not a pastry chef, and then we make beautiful pastries. So it's because we learn together, and that's, I think, that one of the best things about cooking. It should be a learning experience every time.
Yeah, and I mean, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're still going to have something to eat.
Exactly. It's you know what? Actually, the only thing I've ever like cooked and had to throw out a couple times is when I baked. Because it's chemistry, you know, and it's
yes. Much more scientific.
Yes, it's not
things
like
can go wrong much easier when you're baking.
Right. Yeah, it's not. baking has become easier for me as I've done it more, but also the pounds have been found easier the more I bake. So yeah, try not to do it so much. Let's see. Jackie asks, oh wait, no. Adriana is asking, who's your favorite chef on TV? So like a TV chef.
Alton Brown is my favorite TV chef. Definitely, he's like the Jedi master of knowledge, and I'm always like wanting to know the why or the science behind something, and he can explain kind of why something's happening a certain way the best.
I do love his explanations of things because it's I'm one of those people. I always just love to know. I just love to know like different things. You know what like why does this need to be done this way? The scientific reasons behind
Oh
things.
yeah, I'm obsessed with it.
So Lisa wants to know if you've ever made gluten-free pasta, but I think that a more important part of that question would be what's the difference between gluten-free pasta and regular pasta?
So I made it once or twice, gluten-free pasta. The difference is like the main thing that makes pasta what it is gluten. So if you take the gluten out of it, you're not really making pasta, in my opinion. You're making a dough of some sort, maybe more like Play-Doh or like something else entirely. Maybe more like a dumpling or something like that. But it's really the gluten that kind of gives flour and water the ability to be stretched and rolled and to hold its shape. Without that, it wouldn't, stay together. And so I think that's why gluten is like so important. I've made some things without it, but it's never quite the same. The texture is not going to be the same. What it is not the same. It's going to be different.
Can you possibly explain, I mean, if you know, of course, what gluten is for the people who don't know what actually gluten is?
Yeah, so gluten is what happens when protein reacts with water. So you have gliadin and glutenin are two different kinds of protein that think of it like slinkies, like if you have a whole bunch of slinkies floating around and you add water to them, it causes the slinkies to unravel and they slowly start to like come together and make this big long chain. And over time, through kneading and folding and realigning all the slinkies over themselves, they get longer and longer and stronger and stronger. So then it's able to stretch and come back and hold itself. And then it's also able to kind of create these shapes and to hold itself into certain positions and kind of make these big bubbles like you see in pizza dough or in bread. And it's really like gluten, the protein and the water interacting that is able to kind of make everything come together.
Very cool. So now we all know what gluten is. And if you're making gluten-free pasta, you're saying that it's not really pasta. It's just some kind of dough, essentially.
It's some kind of dough. Like that's just me in my like world because I'm like so obsessed with it. And I would hate for someone to make gluten-free pasta, call it pasta, and then someone would be like, ew, gross, I don't like this, and think pasta, like that's the texture of pasta, or
right.
Because it's not. So, I would just call it something else.
What are you making there that you're playing with?
I don't know. I just, fold things and I can't ever stop just like touching dough, especially when it's like in front of me. So like I kind of just folded it into this little box shape. I can hear it's getting wild outside. There's protests
Oh my gosh.
all on my street. I can hear it. My girlfriend is outside holding up signs and recording it, but
oh my goodness.
And they're all right here.
That's very scary. Do you need to go?
I don't know. I think we're okay. The cops aren't here yet, which is fine. The helicopters are all up top, but I think we're all right. We're fine up here. It's like the people down there that I'm more nervous about,
Right.
We're like up high in an apartment building, like, so nothing's going to happen to us.
Yes. I lived in Koreatown, and I'm very glad that I don't live there anymore right now because I would probably be very scared.
Yeah, my buddy lives down right near Melrose where all the looting and stuff were happening. He was worried the other night.
Oh,
it was like a block from his house. It's
very, very scary. Some of the stuff that's going on. you know, this is one of the reasons why I like connecting with people all over the world right now, because, you know, there's protests going on all over the world. So to hear about it, not just watch the news, not just read things on Facebook, but to actually talk to people who are living in places where it's going on and hearing from them what's happening. Oh my God,
Yeah.
I can hear it. Yeah. Like Andrew Zimmern lives in Minneapolis.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's wild there too.
Yeah. So, but yes, actually hearing from people who are living through this, I think it's very important, especially for these participants here that are with us, just to hear about what's going on in the world. It's just very important for all of us to share that information and not just get our information from Facebook or something and just assume that it's true, because it's not.
You have to be mindful consumers of information.
Yes, we do. Sure.
Just like with food, you don't just blindly eat food without knowing where it came from. You want to know where your information comes from before you just consume it.
That is very, very true. I can't believe how loud that is. I can hear it.
It's very loud. And I don't even know how much you hear just because you hear it through here, which I imagine these probably don't pick out too much noise. But yeah, they're there.
Oh my goodness. Wait, there's a question. Oh, Adriana, did you want me to ask him that? Oh, no. Okay. She was talking about Blackout Tuesday. I'm not really sure what that is, but I have seen people doing that, but I'm not.
I'm no expert on the matter. I disagree with what everyone's doing and trying to spread information. It's kind of that thing where I think we're coming into the hive mind mentality, and you see everyone doing it, so you think it's the right thing to do. And I understand everybody wants to show their support and support one another, and like it's a way to say, hey, I believe in this too. But I think it kind of is that game of telephone where it got miscommunicated along the way because no one said to post a black square. The original creators of the movement were just kind of like saying, hey, let's take today to not post about ourselves. Let's not post our own personal agendas, and let's not post pictures of us holding Starbucks drinks or whatever the heck people post. And to instead kind of take a step backwards, pause, and help promote the agendas of the Black community and the movement and everything that's happening. And instead, people are drowning out all of that noise. They're silencing and suppressing important information that's out there. Now nobody's able to see pictures of protests, police brutality. There's voting happening in states today that people are forgetting about because all they're seeing are black squares. So I think there's a lot, it had the right intentions originally, but I don't think people fully understood it and what they were doing and kind of like caught up in it. And so I've been kind of posting on my Instagram stories, trying to get people to at least be a little educated and before they just post things and realize what they're doing and the effects and consequences of that, because now all you're seeing are black squares and it's almost like suppressing everything and everyone's voices that are trying to be heard, that are, spreading where to donate, how to help, what's happening. And it's just becoming now like blackness, and it's like having the opposite effect, where now it's almost, you wonder, was it some sort of like bigger conspiracy that like in order to get people to stop posting about all the pictures of cops beating people up, now it's just blackness, and that's like even scarier.
It is. I agree.
So it's like I don't know. Like I said, I'm no expert on it, but that's kind of my take and my takeaway from it. And I'm kind of trying to quote the like, hey, just black out by muting yourself. Don't say anything unless you have something positive to say. Don't black out and just do nothing and post a black picture, and that's not doing anything for anyone.
That's very true. This is also the reason, guys, why I don't post anything but food and occasionally pictures of my dog, because you could be, if you see something that you're reading and you think, oh my God, I can't believe this piece of news I just read, and you post it, doesn't even mean it's true, but you're spreading false information. And so instead of and so many things are false, it's just false information everywhere. When I read the news, I'll read from one source, and if there's something that sounds questionable, I try to find like 5 other news articles on the same topic. Then if I still am unsure about it, I check it out. There's fact-checking websites called Snopes. You can go on there and check pretty much any fact. There's a piece of food misinformation that's going on right now too about garlic. Have you seen that one, Joe?
No.
They're talking about how you shouldn't buy Chinese garlic. Chinese garlic can be, you can know it's Chinese because they take the roots off the bottom. The bottom is bare. And that's because they don't want bacteria coming into other countries from the soil, from those roots. And that's how you know it's Chinese, which is not true at all. And they were saying that Chinese garlic is bitter, it's got a metallic taste, and all chefs know this. And I was just reading this going, really, did you even bother to check your information with anybody before you posted this? It's very, very not true.
Yeah, people just do that. And I mean, I think what that all comes from is that there are garlic out there that is bitter because of the gas that they use to force it out of the peel and to peel it and get it into like the prepackaged peels.
Yes.
And that additive that they use and the gas they use to blow on it to get the peel off of it is what makes it bitter. And often that garlic comes from China, but that's not the only place that garlic, and that it's not because it's from China, it's because of the process that they use to peel it that makes it off-putting, where there are definitely other brands that do the same thing that are not from China that have the metallic taste. And I think that's a great example.
Yeah, that's so that is what bothers me, especially with food misinformation in particular. There's all kinds of stuff going on right now, especially like with Smithfield pork. People are saying, you know, don't buy it because it goes to China and that's where this virus came from. And it's just like everyone, you know, is just going a little out of control with that. And that's one of the reasons why I just recently bought a book called The Science of Cooking. I don't know if you've seen it. I'll grab it real quick. It's right here. Hang on one sec. So I got this book, The Science of Cooking, and it's fascinating. It's like having Alton Brown, but in a book. It just gives you all of the information about everything, even pasta. There's just very cool stuff in here. So I try to share it with my students every time we have a little Zoom session.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I have
Yes,
another call coming up here at 2:00. So if there's any other questions or anything at all we could talk about, I just want to make sure we get to everyone.
Thank you. Guys, do you have any other questions for Joe? Anyone? I ran out of questions.
That's okay. You asked a lot of good ones.
Yes, she did. Joe, we really want to thank you for coming on today. It was very wonderful getting to talk to you and watch you make pasta. That little rose you're making is adorable as well. Very nice. See, guys, you can make pasta into any shape and it's still pasta. Well, thank you so much for coming. We really did appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate all you guys. Thank you so much. Be safe out there. Take care. And,
you as well.
Maybe we'll talk again soon, all right?
Great. Have a wonderful day. Good luck.
All right, you too.
Thanks.